welcome to the Leaders of Tomorrow, the only show on Indian television where you, the MSME, get center stage. This is ET, our special daily initiative to give MSMEs and entrepreneurs the opportunity to be front and center on every industry and area that matters to you. We talk a lot about education here on Leaders of Tomorrow, but tonight we're talking about the early childcare industry and segment. What you, the MSME entrepreneur, need to know in terms of business opportunities for creches, play schools, as well as daycare, and also what you should do to be a more inclusive organization. Let me start off by introducing our guest tonight. Joining us from Bengaluru, Subramaniam Srinivasaya. He's the CEO of Ascent HR. Right here in Mumbai, Imrana Sheikh. She's the VP HR at Asian Paints. We also have Aditya Khurana, Head of Strategy, Founding Years Learning Solutions, Clay. Imrana, Aditya, Subramaniam, thank you all very much for being here tonight to talk about what's really happening in the early education space in the market and the opportunity really for the MSMEs watching this show. Let's kick this panel off as always by asking the entrepreneur on the panel to talk about Clay, what it is you do, and very briefly explain the model to our viewers.
Excellent. So we've got two brands in the market. One is called Clay and the other is a little company. Both operate on different operating models really. Clay are our independent centers that are located in commercial areas, residential areas, where we set up childcare centers, anything from 3,000 to 15,000 square feet, catering from 60 to 250, 300 odd kids. And these are independent centers. Any parent can come in and use them as they feel free to do so. We run an integrated preschool, evening activities, so it's like a one-stop shop for children, correct? For children the age group of 6 months to 6 years broadly. While our age group goes up till 10 years, most of our users are only till 6 years. We also run on-site centers for corporates within offices. We've got 35 such locations already. We're building another 5, where organizations give us space within their offices to run a childcare center for their employees' children exclusively. Sure. So when parents come in the morning, they get the children with them. They work the entire day in the office. Kids spend the entire day with us at the daycare center. In the evening when they go back with their parents. Sure. So that's the other way that we operate. We're close to 100 centers now across the country. All of them in the top 6 metros today, barring Calcutta, we're there everywhere. And expansion plans are to get 120 centers by the end of March 2018. Okay,
that's interesting, especially that you said largely look at the metros. I'll come back to that. Let me come to you, Imrana. Talk to our viewers about what it is that you do at Asian Paints when it comes to ensuring that you're more inclusive, you're having these childcare centers and facilities for young parents.
Absolutely. As a responsible and progressive organization, we've always believed in being inclusive as a workplace and have been asking ourselves, what is it that we can do more and more every time in this direction? 26 weeks is a lot in conversation these days, but we started way back, many years back. We moved to the 26 weeks of maternity break. We provide extended childcare leave as well to our working mothers. At the same time, we do a lot of workshops, counseling sessions for returning mothers. We have conversation guides introduced for the line leaders who manage these working mothers.
Subramaniam, let me come to you and ask you, a big picture question. Reports that I've been reading saying that while the enrollment rates of children has increased, the quality of education, if you look at a child who's in class 3, the quality of education that he or she should have in terms of being able to read certain books, that's still not there. And this is true across industries. My question to you is whether this is something that can and should be fixed at the early education space.
Well, if you look at the intent of the government through the amendments to the Maternity Benefit Act, one area is clear, that the whole ecosystem of childbirth, child development is something that is being focused upon. In this journey, the creche facility to begin with, to extend up to preschooling is a very critical opportunity. So I think eventually that is an area where the government should encourage industry to participate positively towards developing childcare and making sure the child is also competent to go through the preschooling and the schooling part that you are speaking about. This is a journey that has begun, and I think it's still a long way. We are still a developing economy, and therefore it needs a lot more money to be pumped into this industry. Whether it is part of a social cost or is it going to be the employer kind of a cost today is a question that we are yet to debate upon. and hence the delay in the notification of the rules about the facilities extended into the current act.
Okay, that's an interesting point you're raising, and I have a question, a follow-up question to that. In fact, let me open it up to the three of you. Subramaniam, you're saying that the quality of education is something perhaps that if you bring in private industry, that can perhaps be fixed, particularly in a developing country like India. Is that the only solution? Is there anything that we can learn from our global peers when it comes to increasing the level of our public education system as well?
Primarily, if you look at the developed economies, there is always an interest to develop the full system completely, and hence participation in a government driven school is not a taboo, and it is a well developed facility. In India, somehow, whether it is the rich class or the middle class, we have always veered toward this facility being driven by the private industry, which has been the pioneer. I am not complaining. At the same time, the costs that have been imposed upon such kind of exercise appear to be on a higher side, and therefore calls for government intervention to make sure this is reachable to all, and sensible to say that we are focusing on the child development holistically.
Would the two of you agree with that view?
So I think just to add to what Subramanian said, that first of all, right to education in India only started 6 years plus. So in that light, the recent amendment is great, because finally they're talking about 0 to 6 years. Before that, there was nothing. Education for 6 years below was not even talked about. So first of all, there is talk about it today. In terms of whether a public or a private sector, if you look at any part of the world, correct, it takes both arms to move. It takes both of them to make this work. Primarily for the reason, because if you just do it only for profit and don't put in prescriptive guidelines on what is the minimum standards quality, then things can run amok. And all sectors, unless there is some framework from the government, especially in a sector which is not so developed, even in the developed parts of the world today, early childhood is still a very developing sector. Every year there is innovation happening, every year there is new discovery, every year they are understanding early childhood better, correct? So a country like ours, which is just starting its journey, at the start itself, one should borrow from these examples.
In addition to what Aditya and Mr. Subramaniam also shared, I think there is an opportunity here, a big opportunity of aggregation. Because there are companies, all companies are wanting to find solutions, and they consciously want to make a difference in this particular space. But the how is a big question that needs to be addressed. And if we collaboratively work together as a set of companies and have an aggregated model, that's one opportunity. We do have Anganwadis across the rural India. Leveraging this and skeletal framework that's available by improvising it, it also calls for government fundings and public fundings, because most of the Scandinavian countries have government funded community daycare centers, which we do not have in our country in that kind of a quality. So I think we need to provide quality daycare centers, because the parents need to be comfortable that this daycare center is going to take care of their precious ones.
Imrana, two things that I'm picking up from what you're saying. Let me talk first about government. We've sort of discussed that very briefly. The role of the government is very closely involved in what is happening in higher education as well as primary education. But in early education, while there has been talk that there should be regulation, as we speak, there is yet no regulation of this space. I want to ask the three of you, should the government regulate this space? And if yes, what are the 2 or 3 things that you think that the government should definitely put in place when it comes to at least a framework for the early childcare and early education industry in India?
I'll probably take a first shot at that. In terms of any early childhood framework in even the developed countries or developing countries, when people step out to put a framework in place, they look at 4 points really. One is affordability, the other is accessibility, third is availability, and fourth is quality. Now, if you look at accessibility, while the law today, for example, in whatever shape it's come out, talks about childcare centers or creche only close to office. The fact is the logistics requirement of in our cities today might mean a child might have to travel 2 hours to actually reach the company to use the daycare or childcare center, correct? Which is not very efficient, correct? So that, accessibility is not addressed right now, and it's an important part to address. Accessibility should not only be close to commercial office, should be a part of residential areas as well. Second is availability. Do we have enough childcare centers for this law or any kind of law to be a success today? Because it's such a new industry, we don't have enough players who've done this. It's very fragmented, it's very mom and pop, and our most favorite phrase is, just because you've been a parent yourself doesn't give you the right or the license to parent someone else's child. Why? Because there's science behind what we do, correct? So how do you ensure the science reaches a larger number of people? So what kind of seats are available? Very few today. Third is quality and affordability really pretty much go hand in hand, correct, on this framework. So if you don't have quality guidelines, while you might be able to make it affordable, but is that the best solution for a child? Maybe not. Hence, keeping these 4 parameters in mind, if the government was to put in a framework, addressing each one of them. So the biggest issue in the early childhood space today, which is also an opportunity itself, is the skill development space. Because it's not a scientific industry so far in India, it's just taking off. People haven't invested in training people on this. Right? We've actually set up our own training institute today. We're trying to get accreditation from NSTC. And a big step towards providing the capacity or building capacity towards this sector would be to say, how do you get more courses out, which trains manpower in a scientific way to solve for this.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think like Aditya shared, this definitely requires a greater amount of integration. We have a variety of acts, and I think we need to kind of make sure that there are no interpretation gaps in the entire framework. Basic governance of what is a quality creche facility, what is basic and what is add-on features, because parents are willing to pay a premium and organizations are willing to invest, but not all organizations can afford high quality premium daycare facilities. So can there be a clear distinction between what's basic and what's add-on, so that the organizations have flexibility in trying to give this offer?
Subramaniam, 2 or 3 things that you think the government should do if it is looking at regulating the space?
As Aditya pointed out, the accessibility and the affordability. How do you make it accessible to all the people, and how do you make it affordable? Would the government be willing to bear a portion of this cost, or would you make an employer incentivized to the extent of saying whatever you spend on this, that would probably go to a tax rebate part. So therefore, an incentive in terms of extending the benefit to the employee. So the employee funds it and the government funds it. So this is a typical kind of a thing if you look at in Australia or Brazil. That could be a kind of a beginning for this journey.
All right, do hold that thought. We'll take a very quick break, but there's much more that we have to discuss on the other side. Welcome back. You're with us here on Leaders of Tomorrow, and tonight we're talking about the early education market opportunities for you, the MSME viewer. Subramaniam, let me also talk to you about how, and there's been a very brief mention of how a lot of the play schools, for instance, a lot of the daycares, for instance, are based in Tier 1. We talk to small businesses, we talk to MSMEs and entrepreneurs, a large percentage of whom are not based in Tier 1. If you were to talk to the viewers of our show about this sector, and this sector as a business opportunity for them, what would you like to tell them? Where do the specific opportunities lie? What should they do if they want to set up such daycare centers, such creches outside of Tier 1s, and also, possibly pricing and anything else that they should keep in mind given, the regulatory framework?
Yeah, the child care centers that we talk about today as a result of the change in the Maternity Benefit Act are likely to be a development only in the Tier 1 cities, because that is where the employers would look at a shared service. As opposed to this, if you look at an employer in the Tier 2 city or a Tier 3 city, it would remain at the level in which currently the other benefits under several acts are extended, which are more a showcased part but not exactly a utility. The cost is not really affordable in the Tier 3 or Tier 2 cities at all. So this is where the government can possibly encourage, set up an opportunity, provide a fund, provide some kind of incentives of a tax breaks that would actually enthuse people to participate in this entire program.
Aditya, you started this conversation by saying, you largely look at Tier 1. Is there not a market available in Tier 3, Tier 4, etc.? Or is it just the lack of information which is there right now, where parents say, okay, I don't need to send my child here?
So there's a slight difference between the preschool and daycare market, correct? So preschool is basically for children who are 18 months plus, they need to go to a formal kind of a classroom structure So they get oriented towards joining a bigger school at due course, correct? A daycare is really an elongated play school program in that sense, which allows learning for a child prolonged through the day. It's not concentrated in the morning 9 to 11, 11 to 1 slot. Now, daycare requirement is really around cities where there is a lot of migrant population, correct? Like a Bangalore. A lot of people have moved into that city on account of their work and hence need childcare support, which is prolonged throughout the day, or correct, needed throughout the day. A preschool is actually the requirement for every child in the world, correct? So it's not about tier 1, it's in tier 2, it's in tier 3 and tier 4 as well. I think the real opportunity in tier 3 and tier 4 lie that if you're an entrepreneur who's willing to go down this path is to create a value or a value chain around it. Pricing is important, like in any other parameter, but like anything else, with increasing education and awareness, people acknowledge it's important to spend that little extra so that the child get access to the best, correct? And when it comes to education as Indians, I think we've always believed in investing in it. So hence in a tier 3, tier 4, the daycare opportunity or creche opportunity might not be there. Hence the law doesn't really enable it or disable it. But in terms of preschool, the opportunity was large yesterday. It's only growing by the day because one, it's very fragmented. Second is the awareness today of parents to say, you know what, my 18-month-old needs to go to a preschool. I think this is much higher. So hence in that sense, the opportunity is there, but it's mostly in the preschool market, not in the daycare market.
Sure.
Yeah. I think just in addition, I mean, organizations like yours have a very large women workforce. I think it will also generate a lot of women employment in the tier 3 and tier 4 cities.
Aditya, talk to our viewers if they're looking at this space about how they perhaps build a brand name for themselves. Is it essential that you start right from the beginning, even if you're just a single unit, to be able to create that USP?
Actually, the biggest USP, more often than not, tend to be single units, because when I think so entrepreneurs run their own show or they run their own units, they bring a certain level of personalization. So I think it's very easy to have the first center. The trick is in reflecting the same quality in the second, third and fourth. So it's very easy to do it in the first one and people will come in because they know the promoter is running it or the entrepreneur is investing personal time in it. The moment you go beyond that first or second center, you then put a team in place, which is really how you grow up this business. So in terms of growing up this business, it's all about training, finding the right people, training them and motivating them to stay on.
We're running out of time on this panel. So let me take closing comments. There clearly is a lot that still needs to be done for this sector. But it looks like the government is making a start. I know there is opinion which is divided on both sides, but a start has definitely been made. Subramaniam, I'm going to come to you first. Aditya earlier had raised this point of training of manpower for this industry. It's not just that just because you have children of your own, you're in a position to train someone else's children. The need of technically qualified manpower for this sector is very crucial. How do you think this can be made more broad-based as a business opportunity for MSMEs, which are perhaps looking at entering the training space for early education?
To make sure that you meet the objectives that we have been talking in this debate, you certainly need a very large workforce across the tier 2 and the tier 3 cities. While tier 1 can afford the costs which the employees are paying directly, the tier 2 and tier 3 will not be able to afford this cost, and hence the accessibility point fails. So to that extent, yes, there is an opportunity for training, but then, well, this is who is going to fund this part of it? Or is it that, it is the business by itself which can generate this kind of a business? Well, it is a mutable point. We need to see probably in the next 6 months.
Imrana, let me come to you and talk about inclusivity at workplaces. How do workplaces, no matter what the size is, become more inclusive, and maybe one or two things that you'd want for our MSME viewers to take away from the show in terms of becoming more inclusive?
We definitely have seen abundant research which talks about the benefits of being an inclusive organization. And in a world that we always talk about that it's short of talent, I think it's important to leverage from the talent from diverse backgrounds. And gender diversity is a huge opportunity which sits on the top of this the platform. And we need to just go out there and take it.
Aditya, I'm going to let you have the last word. Technology is a great leveler. Across industries, is it any different for the sector that you're in? How are you using technology, and your advice for our viewers on how they can perhaps use technology?
I think technology plays the role of facilitator everywhere. In itself, it is not the business, though it is for larger IT companies. Sorry. So technology itself is not the business that we are in. We're in the business of people, correct? And a lot of times I'm asked this question that if someone's trained for 10 years with you, will they be able to handle 5 children instead of handling 4 children that they do today, correct? The touch and feel doesn't go away. So technology will help us train better at a cheaper cost maybe without resources traveling. Technology will help us do the back end much better, but that is not the bulk of our cost. The bulk of our cost is still manpower, correct? That cost, I don't think so will come down at any point of time. I think so what the law definitely does is, because suddenly by mandating it opens up the gates of opportunity, technology may help new businesses find their feet faster, because today everything else is a support function. It's the actual delivery which requires people on the ground. So that level of automation will obviously support new businesses and businesses like ourselves. And beyond that, it's really all human touch.
All right. Subramaniam, Imrana, Aditya, thank you all very much for being here tonight to talk to us about some of the changes that we're seeing in the space of early childcare here in India, the opportunities for our viewers. If you have any questions, any feedback on the show, do remember you can always write in. leadersoftomorrowtimesgroup.com is our email ID. Tweet at me personally at Sunanda_J or LOT_ET now. That's our official Twitter handle. On Facebook, we're at Leaders of Tomorrow on ET now. You can also reach us on that number you see on your screen. Thanks very much for watching. Have a good night.